Hi, Mary Shackleby from English 102. I'm actually on today to explain to you how you're going to analyze your fiction short story piece. One of the things that you are going to do is you're going to choose a short story from chapter 16 in the textbook, something that you enjoy reading, something that you might be able to relate to in some special way, and you're going to break it down into all of its respective parts. You're not going to write a book review. Book reviews, you might remember in the past, were basically like short little things where you read something, you basically wrote a reader's response by summarizing first the story and then your reaction to it. No, that's not what you're going to do for this. For your fiction analysis, what you'll do is you'll pick your story, you'll break it down into all of its smaller parts. For example, you may notice that some of the characters have unusual names, and sometimes those names really help the story along. For example, Granny Weatherall, in the short story that was assigned to you guys for a discussion question. She was somebody who weathered everything, managed on her own, and Weatherall was like the perfect name for that character. Your story may actually have something like that. You may actually have a character whose name means something to the story. Also, you'll want to look at plot, conflict, where is rising tension, there's a story arc. This is actually illustrated in the PowerPoint that is in the folder for fiction, and you should have been reading that. But there's a story arc. You may start out like a little bit, you could even start in the middle, where there's rising tension, and then there's a climax, and then a resolution. Every story has some form of conflict, because there's no story that is worth its salt without some form of conflict. Even romance novels have conflict. You might look at them and go, well, that's really just a love story, right? No, a lot of times there's some form of conflict. So you want to look and see, what is the conflict in the story? So what you want to do is look at your story and see where there's the rising tension. What is the conflict? Also, characterization. I think that's been part of your reading, where usually the main character is pretty well chiseled out, so you can really imagine what that character is all about. You can picture what they look like, you can picture how they would behave, you can picture a lot about them. Those are usually the central characters. So who's the central character in your story? There are also flat characters who kind of help to move the plot along. Who are the flat characters in the story? Are there any flat characters? Characters that are well-rounded, are well-described, and create a picture in your mind. Flat characters, they kind of move in on screen and then they move off. They're not that important to the story, but sometimes they help to move the story along. So, are there flat characters, and do they help move the story along? You'll also look at setting. Setting can be very important. Depending on where it is, it could just be in a house, it could be down south, it could be anywhere, depending on what story you've chosen. How well is the setting described? Does the setting lend itself to the story? Does it help the story to have a little bit more life? Sometimes setting itself can be so dramatically done that it's almost a character in and of itself. Look at language. How is this written? Is it in formal language? Is it in casual language? Is there, do the characters have accents that may be difficult for the writer to integrate into the story? So you want to look at that also. Some stories, the characters do have different accents, and it does work, and some writers can pull that off. It's very hard. What I want you to do is I want you to look through the sections of the book, of the textbook, that dealt with fiction. Look at all the different sections. Like, for example, this section about plot. You should be able to take portions of what you've learned from the chapters you've read and from the PowerPoint and take that story apart and analyze all the different parts of that story. So essentially, the story that you pick, you're not going to tell me, oh, I really like this story, or I grew up like this, or any of that stuff. You're not going to be drawing conclusions like that. What you're going to do is you're going to analyze the story itself, analyze how the writer created that story, and analyze all the different parts of the story. So, thanks for watching. I hope this answers some of your questions. This actually does get easier. Once you've done this, you'll find analyzing poetry and then analyzing drama at the end will be much easier because, believe it or not, most forms of fiction have the same basic tenets. Even poetry has like settings and things like that. So, you know, keep an eye on those things because you are going to probably carry some of what you've learned on how to analyze the short story through the rest of the course. So I hope this helps, and good luck on your first essay, the fiction essay.